This is a precursor of a potential chaos in Russia, which will be really, really horrible.
Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the most likely scenarios that could potentially play out should Vladimir Putin die in office.
Было крупнейшей геополитической катастрофой века. Для российского же народа оно стало настоящей драмой.
Number 10. Russia could collapse into new states. Following a period of economic stagnation and political tension, the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, resulting in the independence of 15 states, including Russia and Ukraine.
The mighty superpower, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, is no more.
In the event of Vladimir Putin's death, Russia could experience a similar scenario due to the loss of its central figure.
We should expect the unexpected.
Russia is currently made up of dozens of regions, some of which are federal territories and autonomous areas. Putin's departure could potentially lead to increased internal tensions, prompting some of these regions to seek greater autonomy or even independence.
Why do you see these flags united?
Because these are territories that need to be liberated.
Given Russia's historical response to separatist movements, such secession will likely not occur peacefully. Instead, it could end in a devastating civil war, potentially claiming thousands, if not millions, of lives. Number 9. The possibility of a liberal Russian government. As Putin's long-standing rule continues, many wonder how possible it would be to have a strikingly different leader succeed him.
Now the big question is, when Putin is gone, who will succeed him?
I would expect that Putin will not nominate a leader to replace him until the last minute.
According to some experts, the chances of a liberal, reform-minded government taking the reins largely depends on the timing of Putin's departure. Currently, his conservative regime enjoys considerable popularity among Russians, so a successor will likely keep things the same way.
But regardless of who comes next, Putin has said his successor should carry on his legacy and be somebody he trusts to look after Russia once he's gone.
If it ain't broke, right? However, with the war gradually worsening Russia's economic situation, public opinion could change drastically in, say, 4 or 5 years. If Putin's death coincides with this shift, the opposition might seize the opportunity to install a more reformist president.
Tens of millions of Russians have watched his videos, so some of his ideas have seeped through into the mass of the population.
However, the extent of such a president's power remains a subject of debate. Number 8. The Russian military will be placed on high alert. It is not news that Vladimir Putin's grip on Russia has significantly strained relations with the West.
With one announcement, Vladimir Putin left the world asking, would he?
I'm ordering the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff to put the strategic nuclear forces on special alert.
Given how central a figure he is to the country, Putin's death would create a leadership vacuum that many of these foreign powers might seek to exploit. As such, in the event of Putin's demise, the Russian military will likely be placed on high alert, not only to maintain stability in the country, but also to deter any potential external threats.
In Russia, political repression will continue against all opponents of the regime.
With these forces already grossly occupied with the war in Ukraine, if Putin passes away, certain vulnerable areas could remain exposed due to their resources being stretched thin.
Intelligence reports suggest Russia is running low on ammunition and manpower. Now, it might be that Vladimir Putin asks President Xi of China to help with this military campaign.
Number 7. The Russia-Ukraine war could be dismissed. As the conflict in Ukraine persists longer than anticipated, many wonder if the war would outlast Putin or vice versa.
Now you would always have the same line. This war is forever.
In the former scenario, it's likely that Putin's successor could put an end to the tense situation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, speaking with David Letterman, emphasized that Putin consolidates so much power in today's Russia that his demise could lead to significant institutional disruptions.
Не може все залежати від однієї людини. І тому, коли така людина уходить, інституції зупиняються. Такий час був у Радянського Союзу, зупинилось все.
Amid such internal tensions, Russia would likely not have the time or resources to deal with foreign matters. Hence, the war could be dismissed altogether. However, the situation remains complex. With the many underlying historical and territorial issues, there is no guarantee that Putin's death would lead to a successful conflict resolution.
Because they are now presenting this war as an existential war. I mean, you cannot, for instance, you cannot negotiate with Satan. You cannot set a peace agreement with Satan. You cannot even set a ceasefire with Satan. So if it's a radical evil, it has to be exterminated.
Number 6, the elites could impose their choice. Putin's demise could potentially present two distinct outcomes for the future of Russia and its people.
One way or another, a split in the current political elite is inevitable.
First, if the president designates his successor beforehand and outlines the installment process for that individual, there would be less maneuvering room for high-ranking officials and elites to impose their choice.
In the Putin transition, it's very possible that he will pick somebody who is not now a radar.
Conversely, in the event that Putin's death is sudden and there is no known successor, the elites could exploit such a power vacuum to appoint an individual who is aligned with their own interests. Again, if this happens in the current climate, when Putin enjoys significant popularity among his people, the subsequent government could be equally or even more radical than what exists under him.
Для защиты России и нашего народа мы, безусловно, используем все имеющиеся в нашем распоряжении средства. Это не блеф.
Number 5. Nikolai Patrushev could take over. Russia's constitution stipulates that in the event of a president's death or removal from office, the prime minister takes over as acting president. We'll discuss more on that in a bit. However, one of the most likely successors isn't the current prime minister. Instead, it's Putin's close confidant and intelligence officer Nikolai Patrushev.
It will be very difficult for the Kremlin to sell Patrushev to the Russian people as somebody who understands their daily lives.
Since 2008, Patrushev has served as Secretary of the Security Council of Russia and is said to have greatly influenced Putin's decision to invade Ukraine.
Patrushev, in fact, formulates and shapes the strategy, and he presents the strategy to the president, which he already approves.
He also belongs to the Siloviki, Putin's military circle, from which some experts believe his successor will come. If Patrushev takes over, his leadership would likely mirror Putin's, as both men share similar ideologies and an aversion for the West.
Nikolai Patrushev has been consistently hardline in opposing the West, and presumably he has pulled Putin more and more into that position.
Number 4. Vladimir Putin's constitutional successor. As mentioned earlier, the Russian constitution dictates that if a leader is removed from office, the prime minister steps in as acting president. This is precisely how Putin assumed power in 1999, following former President Boris Yeltsin's resignation.
He made Putin head of the security services. Then Putin was elected prime minister. Then, in 1999, Yeltsin resigned, Putin was president, and his way of operating was clear from the start.
However, this provision only allows the acting president to hold the role temporarily until elections are conducted to choose a leader. The current prime minister is Mikhail Mishustin.
He was put forward as Putin's choice for prime minister after Dmitry Medvedev and his entire government resigned on Wednesday.
While technically next in line, Mishustin is not seen as a permanent replacement for Putin, as he isn't considered to be close enough to him. It is therefore likely that in the event of Putin's death, Mishustin would only serve as acting president long enough for a more formidable candidate to be elected.
The president tasked the government to be at the cutting edge of the country's development, to ensure economic growth and the creation of new jobs. It's the basis for efficient social policy.
Number 3. Fresh elections. If Vladimir Putin passes away today, there is no doubt that the Russian political landscape would likely experience a period of uncertainty and tension.
Russian politics has become a bloody game of competing loyalties in a landscape of power and patronage where loyalty matters more than competence.
The solution proffered by the Constitution is simple. The Russian Federation Council has 14 days to declare fresh elections for a new president. These elections must be carried out within 3 months after the former president's removal from office. If for some reason the Federation Council is unable to do so, then the responsibility falls to the Central Election Commission, which oversees both federal and local elections.
Russian elections are an exercise in managed democracy.
Given Russia's current political climate, a candidate closely aligned with Putin's policies and the conservative United Russia Party might have the upper hand.
The Russian parliamentary election is a simple game. 450 seats in the Duma, 3 days of voting, and at the end, United Russia always wins.
Number 2, an intense power tussle. In 2017, acclaimed writer-director Armando Iannucci released the political satire The Death of Stalin, which depicted a power tussle among Soviet officials after Joseph Stalin's demise.
I must step up. I must take his place while he's on the floor.
But you just said he's irreplaceable.
Irreplaceable. Take his place, as in assembling the Central Committee, of course.
While the film was praised elsewhere, it was banned in Russia, likely due to its uncomfortable parallels. According to some experts, if Putin dies, Russia could experience a real-life death of Stalin scenario.
Comrades, time to set aside our grief and begin to write the next chapter of our great history.
In the 90 days before presidential elections are conducted, an intense power struggle could unfold among influential figures within the Kremlin, the military, and the business elite. Due to Russia's centralization around Putin, a smooth transition between governments may not be likely.
Russia is going through an important time in its history.
As such, the country might expect some level of factional infighting if he dies in office.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Number 1. Russia will likely descend into chaos. Having ruled Russia with a firm hand for over 2 decades and consolidated immense power, Putin's eventual passing would wield profound consequences for the country. As mentioned earlier, his death could trigger political instability and power struggles, which may eventually lead to civil unrest.
All those who deliberately chose the path of treachery, who prepared an armed mutiny, who chose the path of blackmail and terrorist methods will face inevitable punishment and will answer both to the law and to our people.
This turmoil could stem from several factors, including the lack of a clear successor and the absence of any framework for a subsequent government to operate on. Moreover, the influence of military commanders potentially vying for leadership could further complicate the situation.
You see your national leadership divided. You hear Prigozhin say, hey, there was no justification for this war, and saying that the incompetent national leadership is the cause of the vast amount of casualties that have been inflicted on the Russians.
While Russia has weathered multiple leadership transitions in the past, both during and after the Soviet Union, it seems this one may pose an extraordinary challenge for the country.
The Western elite make no secret of their goal, which is, I quote, Russia's strategic defeat.
What do you think is most likely to happen if Putin passes away? Share your predictions in the comments below.
И народа обернулись величайшим потрясением, разрушением армии и распадом государства, утратой громадных территорий.
Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.